So again, welcome to the Supported Decision-Making Toolkit, sponsored by Oakland Community Health Network, along with Mary Sheehan from the Development Disabilities Council. We're really excited to bring the information that's in this toolkit. Mary's going to walk through. She was very instrumental in developing and putting together this toolkit, which was a tremendous amount of work and effort, but we're excited this resource is now available to individuals so they learn more about supported decision-making tools. So Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vicki. And thank you for, the comment about the toolkit. I need to tell you all, though, that the toolkit was definitely a team effort over a period of a number of years. So I'm going to kind of start by just talking a little bit, and then I'm going to share the actual toolkit. And it's going to seem kind of like a game of Jeopardy. We're going to surf the toolkit and give you opportunities to think about what questions you have about supported decision-making and where you might find resources about that within the toolkit. But a little bit of history to start. So the Supported Decision-Making Coalition is made up of a number of organizations from around the state of Michigan. And it also is made up of family members of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as adults with IDD themselves. And so all of those organizations together work toward a common position. Our position statement is found on the MIDDC website. I believe it's also found in Oakland County on their website, the position statement, and a 6-page brochure about supported decision-making are two primary things that group developed, along with that main position that we all share as either individuals or organizations within the state. We also share the common values that education is a key to helping people understand supported decision-making, and that education hasn't been provided and resources haven't been provided historically in Michigan regarding opportunities to look at alternatives to guardianship. So opportunities to use supported decision-making. And so the coalition had some work groups. One work group was to develop that position statement that you can see and that can be shared with you. The second was to develop an education work group. And the third was to develop a public policy work group, because we know that legislation is something that can change how guardianship functions in the state of Michigan. And so different people were assigned. I was assigned to facilitate the education work group. And then that group met and talked about what we need to do. A presentation was created. We also applied for a federal grant and received a federal grant to create youth supported decision-making ambassadors through the civic organization, which is the Center for Youth Voice, Youth Choice. So those youth ambassadors, along with the state leads, which were myself from MIDDC and Jill Gary, formerly Kathy McRae before she semi-retired, from ARC Michigan, took the presentations that we had and developed them further to really address this issue of decision-making for individuals who are younger and younger. We want to, we call it swimming upstream. We want to swim upstream and reach people at a younger age, and get them, families and individuals, to think about how they're going to make decisions as an adult at a much earlier age, so that there isn't this sort of panic time for families when a young adult's turning 17 and school personnel start to talk about this transfer of rights that's going to happen for each student when they're 18, and what does that mean? And oh my gosh, we got to apply for guardianship because we don't know what else to do. We want people to hear about this early on. And so when that work group of the coalition met, that was in the forefront of our minds. Folks that you are aware, Vicki worked on the toolkit. Amy was part of working on the toolkit along with a number of people from other organizations and people with IDD that had the opportunity to kind of review the information. And we wanted to create something that was usable. it ended up being a lot of information. And we felt like in a hard copy version, which we have, and which, you know, we have a few limited copies that left that have been printed. We can share with organizations with when necessary. Vicki has a copy of that as a member of the coalition. But we wanted to put it on the website so that it would be easily accessible. We know most individuals and families aren't going to take a document that's, just shy of 100 pages long. If you counted all the resources as a page, in its entirety. We know in a hard copy version, many people, it's going to get filed in a bookshelf someplace and not really get looked at. But so we put it on the MIDDC webpage. And I'm going to show you exactly how to access that in a minute so that people could, as their young adult, their loved one is going through a particular phase of life, they can kind of pull it out, kind of look at that section and see what's meaningful to them at that stage of life. And then start to look ahead at, okay, these are things I need to think about when they're, as they're approaching that next phase. So that was the intent of this toolkit. And that was a little bit of history on it. It was about 2 years in the making. We had, so many people that had lots of information about different aspects of resources. So we tried to put it all into a one-stop shop kind of tool that individuals and families could use. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. What you're going to see in just a moment is just my web browser, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to access the toolkit and exactly the steps to go through that. And then we're going to kind of peruse the toolkit a little bit and spend some time finding out resources that could be helpful to you. All right, so here we go. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to include, as I'm clicking, I'm going to include sound in case we want to play any of the videos. All right, I'm going to make this larger. So the only one I can see right now is Vicki, because I'm sharing from my screen. Vicki, I'm just going to double check. Do you see like a search engine up at the top there?
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to
Unmute
type
it. I
in
sure do.
capital M, small I, capital D, capital D, capital C, or MIDDC, which is the acronym for the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council. As you see from my video, the organization that I work for. And I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to take you here. And you can click on, not to be confused with Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation. Whenever you use an acronym, there's always 3 or 4 organizations that share the same acronym. But the one you want here is the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council. So I'm going to click on that. And it's going to look a lot like all the web pages for the Department of Health and Human Services, which is the department in Michigan that we operate under. So I'm just going to show you how to get to the toolkit. So you just scroll down and we have some major sections to our web page here. There's a whole section that you see over here at the far right on supported decision making. And so I'm going to click on that because I want to know more about that. And then you see the section here. It just gives a brief description of supported decision making. There's lots of things you can access here. Right at the top, you see supported decision making toolkit. Okay, before we click on that, I'm going to share Your Life, Your Choice is a video that's available. It's a short 18-minute video that is part of, included in the toolkit as well. It shows individuals and families from all over the state of Michigan talking about this topic of supported decision-making and the difference between supported decision-making and guardianship and why one would be preferred over the other. And so it's a nice short description for families to use or individuals to kind of see and get kind of a beginning base. And because it's a video, it might be more intriguing for some people than others. And then in this stage of the webpage, and we're going to go back to the toolkit in just a moment, It talks a little bit about the coalition. So if you want more information about that, you can see where you can get the video. And then the two brochures are down here at the bottom, supported decision-making position statement and the brochure that I mentioned earlier that were created by the coalition. So this particular presentation's about the toolkit. So we're going to go back here to where it says view supported decision-making toolkit. And the first thing that you see there is it's going to go through our position statement. It's going to go through the 6-page brochure. So again, you can access them here. And there's a little area called Learn How to Use the Toolkit. We're going to do that for you today. So as you can see from the toolkit, we really broke up into life stages and then some additional resources. So we know that this is a huge document and it might not seem as accessible as we would like it to be in the hard copy form. So we broke it up into different age range, and then under each age range, there's different categories. So you can, as a family or individual, think, oh, you know, I have a young child. What do I really need to think about right now, 0 to 5 years of age? Because it doesn't seem real meaningful to me to think about supported decision making. 0 to 5, parents are making decisions for children, or if parental rights have been removed, there's some sort of guardianship in place for an individual 0 to 5. So what would I want to know? What we really want to do is, as I said earlier, as a coalition, is reach families at a younger and younger age. So even 0 to 5 years of age, there's things you can be thinking about and things you can be doing to plant those first seeds about decision making for people with IDD. The same way Americans typically do for children that are in the neurotypical population. So what you can do then is just click on any of these sections and you get a wealth of information. So we're going to go to the caret there and click. And each section is kind of self-contained. So it's going to have a basic introduction about individuals with IDD, 0 to 5 years of age. And then you're going to find all of these categories: choice making, communications, education, financial, well-being and medical, safety. And that's what we have for 0 to 5. There are some additional sections as individuals get older. We start to talk about things like sexuality and relationships and additional sections in each category. So now is when it gets kind of like the Jeopardy game. I'm going to start out with Vicki. And Vicki, just in this particular section, 0 to 5 years of age, what would you like to see? So pick a category for 500 points, Vicki.
Excuse me.
I would,
Excuse me, please. Can you
Yeah.
make the print larger? It's so small, I can't even see it.
Okay, let me see if I can do that using my screen here.
I think you can do maybe Control Plus might help.
Yep. Is that better?
Not really, but
Okay. I've done a few clicks up. Is it larger for you, Vicki?
Yes.
Okay. So on your own screen, you can also click Control Plus and make it even larger.
okay.
All right. So again,
That's
there's an
heavy.
introduction section. So Vicki, choose a category.
Sure. I'd like the first one, and something in there like teaching independence, choice making, teaching independence, maybe.
Okay. So then you just click on that resource, and each of these have, it could have 1 or it could have 100 pages of information. It's toolkits that have been put together by other organizations. It's information about that specific category. So when you pick there and click on it, you come to here, special education and inclusive learning. So again, thinking about 0 to 5 years of age, and early on, and those types of education that would be available to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So things to think about: people with disabilities asking for help, learning from 0 to 5 years of age. If I have a disability that impacts my reading, how do I ask for help? So each of these sections then could be activities that kind of help encourage independence for children with significant disabilities. You see down here, even cooking and baking, doing chores. That responsibility piece is a piece you want to start very early on thinking about, because when we make decisions and when we express our decisions, we also have a level of responsibility for the decisions that we make. And so there are ways to really start doing that, and that's what this resource does. For students as young as 0 to 5 years of age. And I'm just going to kind of scroll slowly here. You see some additional documents that are all available, or different points of this particular resource. The individuals from the coalition that served in this work group from 0 to 5 years of age felt like this was one of the resources that made a lot of sense. Ultimate Guide to Timetable Planning in U.S. Schools. I'm just going to pull that up. And you see different resources that are available there as well. Thinking about technology for students, even things like how to carry a backpack for a student with a disability, why it's important. Independent dressing. So again, for individuals 0 to 5 years of age, decision-making starts then. And we really want families to think about that early on. And again, bringing us up to the top of just that one section. So you see how this one resource gives lots of ideas in lots of areas. And we really want it to be holistic and thinking about, all the life domains. Something as simple as brushing teeth, playing card games, 10 activities to encourage independence. I love it. Getting youth to think about this as an early age. As some of you may have heard when Amy and I were chatting, I'm recently been blessed by my son and daughter-in-law with a grandchild. And she is just for about 4 months old on the 12th. She will be exactly 4 months old. And we're already thinking about these kind of things. We might be an unusual family in that sense of, what are things we're going to do to help her, my granddaughter Sutton, be independent when she's an adult. And so as a young couple, they're already thinking about how is Sutton going to survive adult life when it's likely that there'll be a time that she's an adult where they're no longer there to support and to assist her. So they're really thinking about independent life. And, as grandma, I encourage that highly. All right. So Vicki, I'm going to go back. And again, you can just use your arrow to go back. Or you can click on X's up here and close windows. So again, we're now back at the beginning of the section for 0 to 5. Okay. And there's a list of all the resources just in that one section. Okay. 529 plans, things about special needs trust. Finances for 0 to 5 is something starting early. They're already thinking about a school fund, for continuing education. At 4 months, we don't really know where Sutton's going to be educationally. When she begins going to school, she's attends daycare a few days a week. But it's not too early to start thinking about those things, like ABLE accounts can be started for somebody, right after birth. All of those kind of things are ways to think about financially, how can somebody be as independent as possible? Things like an allowance, the power of a piggy bank. those beginning financial lessons of having control over a small sum of money. Vicki and I sometimes joke when we talk about this part of it, because, back in the day when I was coming up in the 1960s, it was like a quarter a week allowance. I'm sure with inflation, it's like $5 or something now. But having control over some money and understanding, money comes in and money goes out. And when all of it goes out, it's gone. And so you might have a period of time, if you don't spend wisely, that you don't have any access to money until that next set of dollars or coins comes in. And so, again, those are some beginning lessons that you can teach 0 to 5 years of age. And here's lots of resources geared specifically toward young adults in that age and toward people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Health and well-being, we get into the early on in Michigan and developmental milestones. All of that's available to people as well. All right, so Vicki, you went first, so you get to pick somebody else. I'm going to go back a few steps to the beginning of
All right.
the resource. So pick somebody else, and they're going to pick a category, and we're going to kind of explore that a little bit.
All right, I choose Elizabeth.
All right, Elizabeth, you can just unmute, and you are up for the next Supported Decision-Making Toolkit Jeopardy. You get to pick a category that you want to explore a little bit more.
I want to do the transition years.
Okay, so I'm going to click here. And again, you'll see in the beginning just an introduction specific to 18 to 26 or 19 to 26 years of age. And then we talk about autonomy, choice making, communications, education, financial, health, well-being and medical, home, legal, safety, and sexuality. So you can see where as a young adult goes from birth to getting older and going through different life stages, different categories were added on. So Elizabeth, if you want to go ahead and pick, which of these categories do you want to look at a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that I would say legal, and then maybe the Michigan Power of Attorney forms, or maybe the practical tool for lawyers.
Okay. So you want to explore the financial
Legal.
one?
No,
Oh,
under
I'm
legal.
sorry, legal.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. Let me get to that section. All right, so let's go through all of these. Okay, so power of attorney forms. It goes through the 9 types. Now, we don't recommend as a coalition any one particular form. We put these here because we want you to have examples of how they can look. We really encourage you to be person-centered. So you could take one of these PDFs, download it, and then modify it to make sense for your son or daughter or the individual that you're working with. So again, there's different types of power of attorney. If you come to any of the presentations that the coalition has put on over the last 5 to 6 years, we talk about different types of power of attorney. There's durable, there's limited, there's medical power of attorney, sometimes called patient advocate or medical proxy. In different areas of the state and different organizations refer to them differently. So right here, I'm just going to click on this one and make it a little bit larger. So hopefully everyone can see that a little bit better. So again, it's just a template. And again, we encourage you to, pull out the PDF, download it to your computer, and then you can change it as you like by just editing the PDF. So the principal's name, am of sound mind, and I voluntarily make this designation. I revoke any financial powers of attorney I have signed in the past. So one thing that's different about guardianship and power of attorney is guardianship is assigned by a judge in a court. That guardian may be a family member or it may be a public guardian. And the only person that can change that is, again, to go back through court and have a judge change that. Whereas in a power of attorney, the individual themselves, that young adult, can choose who they value and trust, the opinions that they value and who they trust. And they can choose anybody they want that meets basic criterion of being over 18 years of age and some base legal criterion. It can't be somebody who's currently incarcerated and some things like that. And then the nice part about this is if something happens, the relationship changes with that person, they can change the power of attorney. So another reason that that's very helpful is that a power of attorney can be changed as life changes. So for example, my brother, who is older than I am, and I'll tell you not his age, but mine, I'm 62. My older brother that has been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum can change as life changes. Something that's near and dear to him, and he's been thinking a lot more about, is all of the siblings are getting older. I am the youngest, so that tells you all of my siblings are older than I am. And he's been thinking a lot about, well, with power of attorney, do I want to think about somebody in the next generation? So he's looking at nieces and nephews, and my son, being one of those nephews, as potentially changing his power of attorney at some point. Because much to many people's surprise, he's been thinking about this for a while. And the comment came up, well, what if you die before me? So if somebody is supporting him in a particular area, understanding that he can just easily change a power of attorney to the next person that he would like to serve in that capacity. All right. So Elizabeth, do you think that would be helpful for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
To look more at this section. Okay. I'm going to go back. And so that's what's under Michigan Power of Attorney forms, and then practical tools for lawyers, steps in supported decision-making. There is some great information, and this was put together by lawyers. There's also some stuff on the Michigan Bar Association website where they talk about supported decision-making. Okay, so this is a whole document that goes through the practical tool, and practical tool is used as an acronym. So presumed guardianship is not needed. And they really encourage, so we often say presume competence first. And then R is for reason. Clearly identify the reason for the concern. So we often get, when we ask people this question, so what is it that you feel the person needs a guardian for? And you'll find in at least 10 states in Michigan, or 10 counties in Michigan, that are pilot sites for the guardianship diversion. They're going to be asking. So when somebody files a petition for guardianship, people are going to be, at the court and through the guardianship diversion project are going to be asking these kind of questions. So what is the concern? There's 7 major concerns that people express typically for why a person needs to have a guardian. It's money management, healthcare. Sometimes we call these different titles. Relationships is one of them. Community living, employment, personal safety. So these are kind of the top 7 reasons why people give, and then it kind of addresses those. So it's really getting people to think, well, they don't need to have a guardian because they have a disability. They need to have a guardian because the decisions that they make in these areas could be harmful to themselves. So then it's kind of a different template. Then you can look at where they need support in those particular areas, and then apply the least restrictive support. So for example, if a person's created their trajectory for their life, and say part of their trajectory is moving out into an more independent apartment, but there's this fear that they're not going to take medications as needed. Okay, you see in the middle of this here. So if that's checked, then you can look at, okay, if, and this was the case for my brother when he moved into his apartment years and years ago, that he would not take his medication on his own without having a family member or staff there to support him at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so there's assistive technology that can be put into place. And so in his case, he had a medication dispensing device, and if the medication wasn't removed by a certain time frame from the dispenser, it prompted a phone call to come out. And unfortunately for my brother, that phone call came out to his bratty little sister. And at 8:30 on a Sunday, when it's the one day I can sleep in the week, I was not very pleasant with him. Sort of like the conversation, I think the first one went like, dude, why am I getting a call so early? And he kind of chuckled and he's like, I forgot to take my meds. And I'm like, yeah. And so then I could video chat with him and watch him take his meds. He could live in the apartment. He could be safe. We needed to address that one issue. Whereas we could have looked at that and said, oh, he needs to have a guardian to make those decisions. Moving independently isn't for him because it'll be dangerous. We could look at where does he really need support and figure out then what is the least restrictive support that makes sense in his life. And again, being very person-centered. So that's a tool there. I'm going to just X back to this section. And the last thing here is Law Depot Power of Attorney templates. So again, we've offered a couple different resources where families can look at specific templates. Again, these also cover short descriptions of the different types of power of attorney and such as well in this section. All right. So did that take you where you needed to go, Elizabeth?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
All right. So Elizabeth, you get to pick somebody next while you're doing that. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the toolkit. So we're ready for the next contestant on supported decision-making toolkit Jeopardy.
I will pick Karen.
Okay, Karen, pick your category.
Hello, let's pick aging adults.
That's my age bracket, 62 and above. You know, and when I look at this toolkit now, as opposed to when we first started it, I kind of look at it very differently. And I look at my own life differently in the sense of what are the things I need to think about in my own life as I turn 62 and above. And that's definitely a category we spend a lot of time talking about with my brother as well. So again, that section starts with an introduction. And then we have autonomy, choice making. I'm going to go slowly so people can catch these on the screen. Communication, financial, health, well-being, and medical, home, legal. And again, in this category, you're going to see some of the same resources we looked at in the previous one, because we want the sections to be sort of self-contained, because we know it's a big document and people aren't going to look at the whole thing all at once. Safety, sexuality, and so on. So where would you like to go, Karen, within this one section?
Let's do health, well-being, and medical.
Let me find that. Sorry for the scrolling on the screen. Okay, so it's kind of a big section here. Do you have one in particular you'd like to look at?
Let's do substance abuse, please.
Substance abuse. So this is from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and it kind of goes through this resource and some articles that were spotlighted on alcohol during Alcohol Awareness Month. And know that you can reach out as a family to this organization if substance abuse is a part of your family dynamics with an individual that you support. So substance abuse alone isn't a reason to go through a guardianship, but substance abuse is definitely indicating that somebody needs supports in particular areas. So again, this gives you resources to look at. All right, do we want to go back one? And any other ones in this area, Karen, that you'd like to look at under this category?
Why don't we try the know the signs dementia in persons with IDD?
So a thing I like that you're going to that one, because a thing that we don't always remember to think about is that people with IDD go through the same life cycles as everyone else. And they might go through them at different age range, different age stages than other individuals from the neurotypical population. But again, they also live at many intersections. They're not just a person that happens to have a disability. They're a person that goes through life stages. They're a person that may represent multiple identities, may also represent the LGBTQIA plus community, or be a person of color. So we have to look at this in the context of all the different intersections. They may be a person who's duly diagnosed as having both an intellectual and developmental disability and a mental illness. And as they age, they may go through dementia. And it can be a little more tricky for professionals to kind of pick out what's happening and that's a function of their disability, and what's happening that is a function of aging and potential dementia. So again, it's an article on that topic that also gives some additional resources. So common signs of dementia in a person with intellectual and developmental disability, confusion and problems with recent memory. And so, I've worked in the past as a supports coordinator in a community mental health setting. And so this is something for people who know that individual the best. You can help to identify for medical professionals what's a typical level of maybe questioning or confusion for them and what's new and different. And for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, that's a key to kind of understanding them. I see this with my brother. I have a sister who's currently in the hospital who, we were addressing this with her yesterday. There is an increased level of confusion, but hospital staff don't, live with her on a daily basis, so they don't necessarily know what that typical level of understanding is. So being able to identify the difference and having people that spend the most amount of time with the individual, and that can help medical staff kind of determine what are the best tests to run to determine if dementia is, we're seeing the beginning signs of dementia. Wandering and getting lost in familiar places, moving with rapid shuffling steps, loss of bladder and bowel, laughing or crying inappropriately, difficulty following instructions, loss of speech, disorientation, loss of daily skills, things they were able to do, maybe even weeks ago, that they're just suddenly not able to do. Changes in personality, long periods of inactivity or apathy, and the development of seizures. So it can really help you kind of think of specific things geared toward people with intellectual and developmental disabilities that might be, as they age, signs of early onset dementia. And then it shares some additional resources at the bottom there. Okay, I'm going to click back. Anything else, Karen, that you'd like to look at under this particular section?
I think that's it for now. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Karen. So who's next? You get to pick a name from the participant list. And while you're doing that, I will go through.
Mackenzie.
Okay, Mackenzie, it looks like you're up.
Can we do additional resources?
Additional resources, okay. So these are resources that either people in the subcommittees didn't feel, fit one life domain. Maybe they fit a bunch, or maybe they weren't specific to a particular life domain. So there's just additional resources. So these are videos. Again, the supported decision-making, your choice, your life video. There's another video that is the intersection of employment and public benefits, and then employment of families perspective. So, you know, for young adults, when they're first starting to think about employment, there's some additional videos that are available. Again, the MIDDC is under the Department of Health and Human Services, but we're funded by the federal government. So funds come to Michigan from the federal government to have a developmental disabilities council in every state and territory. Our work is owned by the citizens of Michigan, therefore. So any of these videos, as an individual that's a professional or family member or person with IDD, you are welcome to download any of these resources and share. They're not copyrighted. They are there for your use. So those are the videos. And then these are resources specific to supporting the termination process. So the termination of a guardianship. It goes through, Jenny Hatch is a nationally known individual who, you know, her case made national news about her petitioning and having the support to terminate an initial guardianship. Then there are, how hard is it to terminate a guardianship? So as people are starting to think about that process, I get probably 3 to 5 phone calls a week. Yes, Vicki, a week from people who are, you know, older individuals who have had guardians for a number of years, people with IDD, and either they or their families are at the process where they're thinking about, do we really need to have this guardianship? Was that a decision that we should have made years ago? Or maybe it was a decision they felt comfortable making years ago, but the person's grown and changed and learned, and new resources and new assistive technology has been put into play. And so now they're thinking a guardianship is too intrusive in the person's life, so they'd like to terminate it. So this section goes through specifics on the termination process and how to do that petition. Then there's support agencies that might not have been listed in any other area: Michigan Alliance for Families, Department of Education, Center for Parents Information and Resources. And then again, each of these takes you to those organizations' web pages. Disability rights. So it just shows you different resources that can be accessed here in Michigan. So Mackenzie, what would you like to see next?
Can we look at the other adult one that's before aging adults?
So adult life.
Yes.
Okay, so again, the section's going to start with a brief introduction. So we're thinking of adult life as 26, so they've left the school setting, and before age 62. So the categories are similar. And again, some of the resources you've seen in other sections as well, because they're pertinent to both age ranges, and others will be new to this section. So we've got autonomy, choice making, communications, financial, health, well-being and medical, home, legal, safety, sexuality. Any of those sound intriguing to you, Mackenzie?
Safety.
Okay. So for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, a fear is often, you know, how will they handle a crisis? We may be able to help them to develop a routine on a day-to-day basis for safety. We've got assistive technology in their kitchen to make sure they're turning off the stove. We have, you know, a doorbell camera so they can see who's out, you know, knocking on their door before they open the door. We can have smart technology to lock the doors at a certain time at night to, you know, for people who don't read, maybe Alexa, who can do things in their home just by voice activation. All of those things are pieces that we considered and that we've put into place for my brother over the years when he's lived in independent, you know, what I call interdependent community living. So again, another thing is to think about what are the types of, you know, unforeseen disasters that can happen in Michigan, things like tornadoes, floods, all of those kind of things, power outages. How do we deal with that? One of my favorite stories to talk a little bit about is two gentlemen that I worked with years ago in the Ann Arbor area who, after a lot of team effort and a lot of support from both of their circles of support and their families, moved into an interdependent apartment in the community. And that same year, there was actually, I think they called it a brownout rather than a blackout, but most of Ann Arbor went without power for more than a day. And so, think of suddenly the internet's out, the lights are out, all of these kind of things. And so because they had a disaster plan that they had created for their apartment, what the last thing they had seen on the news when power started to go out and before it went out for them was seniors are particularly vulnerable. And they knew that the woman living in the apartment next to them was a senior citizen who really had fought about them moving next door to her. They literally went to their freezer, took out all of the food, put it in a box, and went and knocked on her door. And their comment was, the radio said, because they did have a battery operated radio, the radio said, we should all look after senior citizens right now, and you're really old. So we've brought you food because we want to make sure you have food to eat. And it was, it was a touching kind of moment for her. And it was this eye-opening experience of, wow, hey, I don't have, I didn't have a crisis plan for what happens in natural disasters or unforeseen disasters. And wow, what nice neighbors I have. This person ended up becoming, through the crisis, she had them over for dinner that night, and they played cards long into the night, with lanterns and flashlights. And they developed a relationship, and she became an integral part of their circle of support based on that one situation, based on the fact that they had an emergency plan and they were going to take action based on their emergency plan. So that's just one way, these resources can kind of talk about that, who to call in a disaster, whether the disaster is an earthquake. And I have to tell you, we don't really think a lot about earthquakes in Michigan, but I had a friend who was just traveling to New York and texted me and said, I'm in the Empire State Building and we just got an earthquake alert because there was an earthquake in New Jersey and they were feeling it at the observation deck of the Empire State Building. So, you just never know what you need to have plans for. And so it's really these are all resources to help individuals put a plan together. And so when we're thinking about independent living for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, this can be a really important task.
Yeah, me.
Okay, I heard a comment. Did somebody have a question?
So I just told my caregiver, God bless you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So Mackenzie, you get to pick who's next, and I am going to go back a
I'm
few
gonna pick
seconds.
Holly.
I'm
Hi.
sorry.
Oh,
All right.
Holly,
Do
she
you wanna-
said.
All right. Do you want to go ahead and pick a category that you'd like to explore more? We can do one more. It is 10:51 and I was given an hour. So we've got about 9 minutes left. So we can peruse another section.
And Mary, I'd like
actually-
a few minutes just at the end of the training to show folks where they can find some resources on our website.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. We'll just take
Sorry,
one
Holly.
last one and then we'll turn the floor over to you, Vicki.
Thanks.
Did you guys do transition years yet?
Yes.
I don't know, but we can take another look at that. I think we started out there, but is there another section you'd like to see specifically? Can I encourage you to do life course? Would you be willing to look
Yeah.
at that, Holly? All
Sure.
right.
Mhm.
The reason I really want to show this is it's a whole nother initiative for MIDDC to infuse the tools and the resources from Life Course. And it's often called Charting the Life Course. And these tools are helpful for any age. You'll see this resource in almost every section. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to take you to this wonderful website. So I mentioned that there's a DD Council in every state and territory. There's also a protection and advocacy organization in every state and territory. In Michigan, that is called, it used to be called MPAS, or Michigan Protection and Advocacy, and now it's called Disability Rights Michigan, or DRM. And they help with legal matters for individuals and families of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And then the third organization that the federal law that dictates a DD Council also dictates a USID, which is a University of Excellence on Developmental Disabilities. So it's University U of Excellence E, Center C, and then DD, or a USID. And that organization in Michigan is the Developmental Disability Institute at Wayne State University. But Life Course Nexus was created by the USID in Missouri, University of Missouri, Kansas City. And I'm just going to scroll down of what you see. Now you can enter, go through their library, Life Course Learning, network, about them, events, all of those tabs that you see up at the top here. But these three forms in particular are especially helpful when you're thinking about this idea of supported decision-making. The form at the left here is called the Tools for Exploring Decision-Making. You're just seeing the first page of it. It's a multi-page tool. And it really goes into different life domains. The first one's daily life and employment. And then it goes through different things that a person needs an adult needs to go through in daily life and employment. What do they need support on? Whoop, I'm moving around so it's covering it up, because you're able to download these forms and use them for free. So the blue column is the person can make decisions about that, or they can go through each of those steps independently on their own. The middle section, the purple section column, indicates that they need some supports. And then the green column says that they need somebody to make decisions for them. All right. Amy, is it all right if I share a little information from your life?
Oh, yes.
Amy's co-presented with me a number of times on this topic. And so when Amy first filled this out, she had a full plenary guardian and conservator, somebody that made decisions in her life and somebody that also made decisions about her property and finances. Now, these are living, breathing documents. They're going to change and grow when the individual grows and changes. Now, all of her X's are in the blue column. Now, that doesn't mean that Amy still doesn't get some support. She meets regularly with people at the ARC in her county and gets support just going over financial stuff, and then she makes the decisions. But imagine being able to like dissect different aspects of your life and where you need support, and then what's the least restrictive support that can be put into place. And these kind of forms can also be used in that termination process, where we could show a judge and individuals can say, I do get the support I need, here's where I get it from. The middle form here is a trajectory, and that's really a nice planning tool. Students can use that before an IEP to think about where I'm at now, what's my history, where I'm at now, and where do I want to be, and what do I want to avoid in my life. And then things that lead, as the arrow shows, going upward to that life that you want, your vision of a good life, can be goals that end up on your individual education plan, or they can end up, if you're getting supports from a community mental health, in your PCP as a goal. So now we understand this person needs to learn to budget money. So what are the things we're going to do? What are the goals we're going to create with them and work on and support them through over the next year that are going to help them learn about money or taking medication or whatever it might be that individual needs. This third form is the STAR, and it takes you through different sections at looking at, okay, if the issue is somebody not taking their medication, what do we know they can do now? Who could be in this purple section? Who could be involved in that? Maybe they have a nurse assigned, maybe they have a dietitian assigned, maybe they have some family members that visit often. And who could we add to their circle of support? Who do we help them build social capital with that could assist them in making sure they take medication daily? Then looking at eligibility specific services, and then community-based services, and then assistive technology. And oftentimes when we think of the STAR and we think of each of these 5 sections, we can come up with a way to address a concern that doesn't involve guardianship. So again, all these are free of charge. You can see at the bottom here, you can download them and have those available. We often do this as pre-planning documents. Somebody meets with my brother and fills them out, and then we have multiple people in his circle of support fill them out, and then part of what we do at the meeting is kind of contrast and compare them and make sure everybody in his circle knows where he's at with each of these tasks in his life and what supports he might need and what supports are available. All right, so thank you so much. I am going to flip back to the beginning of the toolkit, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Vicki.
Thanks, Mary. That was great. I'm going to share my screen. I want to show our website.
Okay,
really
I'm going to
quick.
stop sharing, which I think is required for you to
Okay.
be able to share then.
All right, can you see our website? So our website is oaklandchn.org. And there's a couple things on our website that might be of interest to you. Some of the toolkits some of the tools you'll find in the toolkit and that Mary talked about, we've done past webinars on those. So if you go to resources up here at the top, you go to this recorded training, click on that, you'll see supported decision-making webinar series. And there's a number of things. We've done ABLE accounts, power of attorneys, the general supported decision-making and what that means. So there's a number of things there. These typically are about an hour and a half videos, and you could take a look at those. And then if you forget where Mary's website is, you can do our website, and there's a link to it. So if you go to person served, you go to supported decision making, and then you'll see here there's a link to the toolkit. So it's just person served, supported decision making, and link. And then the webinars again are just resources, recorded trainings, supported decision making. Then you have a whole host of ones that we've done in the past. Okay, so that was a lot. Any questions or comments for us before we wrap it up?
No,
All right, well,
but that's
oh,
very informative, very
Ben.
valuable information.
Oh, thank you
Mary.
for saying that.
Thanks, Ben.
So we are happy to follow along if people have, they start surfing the toolkit or they don't find something that they, a resource that they think they might need or that could be on the toolkit. It is a living, breathing document. If you ever find out a link on there no longer works, please notify me. I'm going to drop my email into the chat. It is my name, Shan M, @michigan.gov. You can email me and we will update. Okay, I tried to put that in the chat. For some reason it wouldn't go. Let me try it one more time. There we go. So Shan M @michigan.gov. Feel free to contact me. And I'm happy to help families work through things individually. As I said, we're getting about 3 to 5 phone calls a week from around the state because we do serve the whole state of Michigan. So I'm about to start calling Vicki about some of, we need some other folks in the coalition to be able to, field some calls and take some questions sometimes. So if you have a question that you didn't think about while we're here today, feel free to follow up with me later.
All right, thank you, Mary. Great job. We appreciate
Bye,
it.
Mary.
Thank
Bye,
you, everybody,
everyone.
for attending. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.